believe IIT mein ho gaya to life set ho gayi. We believe we get into the IIMs or the top business schools of the world, life set ho gayi. We believe we crack into the top tier firms, life set ho gayi. But the truth is, none of that guarantees a happy life. None of
Have you ever wondered what would be Ankur Warikoo's views on consulting versus product management, picking stocks versus investing in index funds, or perhaps whether you should be living in tier 2 cities or whether you should consider to move abroad and live outside of India? Then hi, welcome to my channel. I am on a chai break. I know this says coffee. This is the only mug that I have today. And on my channel, I talk about all things management consulting, all things MBA, and all things career advice, many times personal finance as well. So feel free to hit on the subscribe and the notification button so that you are notified whenever I'm at a chai break, doing a lot of interesting discussions with a lot of interesting people, and of course, taking a leaf from my own book as I've spent last 10 years working in management consulting and strategy. This particular episode is very meaningful for me because I have known and I have worked with Ankur since almost 6-7 years ago. I was working in strategy domain in nearby, and then of course for my own education venture, Ankur has been a professional advisor since quite a lot of time. So I had a lot of interesting time chatting with Ankur, catching up on a lot of interesting details, and I'm going to be sharing this entire chat that I had with Ankur over 30 minutes in 2 or 3 part series. So this is the one of the many parts. I hope you like it. And stay tuned till the end. So of course you get to know about all the interesting views that he had between the conundrums that we all could have. And I look forward to hearing more comments if you would want to invite more interesting people like Ankur on this channel. So thank you so much for taking out time for doing this. And I am personally very excited. I have bunch of questions that I anticipate could be very meaningful for my audience. And if you believe that some question is not relevant, feel free to ignore. If you feel that some question is you don't want to answer, feel free to ignore them as well. So if you are fine, happy to actually hear initial words. And then of course we could start with the Q&A. Very, very excited, Ankur, to do
Thank
this.
you. The excitement is very mutual, Shatakshi. It took me a while to call you out as Shatakshi because we all know you as Shasha. But thank you so much. I'm so glad that you started your YouTube journey. It is going to be enriching. It's going to be meaningful. And to the series of conversations you have with so many other folks, I'm sure your audience and you yourself will benefit a lot, not just the speakers. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Brings me towards changing levers. So a lot of youngsters, especially in their 20s, are very anxious, very stressed, especially in the Indian ecosystem where the lottery ticket to fame or making a segue into big organizations or big institutions has to do with examinations. So, for example, in government sector, there is UPSC. In even private sector, students struggle a lot with GMAT. I've had my own struggle and years for just cracking GMAT. So, someone who is, Ankur, stuck in that loop, who's not able to find the next step forward and who perhaps think that let me take that one more crack at it, perhaps it is sunk cost mentality getting in or not, what would be your 2 piece of advice to that person?
I genuinely feel that at some point of time it has to be recognized that the college, the education, the exam is a means to an eventual outcome, not the outcome itself. So many of us, and including me, I have been absolutely a part of this entire tribe when I say it, that we believe IIT mein ho gaya to life set ho gayi. We believe we get into the IIMs or the top business schools of the world, life set ho gayi. We believe we crack into the top tier firms, life set ho gayi. But the truth is, none of that guarantees a happy life. None of that guarantees a fulfilled life. And it's only much later you recognize that that is the truth. But in that moment, you believe there is no other truth but for you to crack that, because it lends the highest probability around the path that you wish to take. I am a living example of not having done any of the standard things that one would expect to, and yet be where I am, not because I'm the smartest person I know or the most hardworking person I know. It's just because there was something in me that convinced me very early on in my life that there are multiple paths to the same outcome. And as long as you're not fixating yourself and determining that there is only one path, none of the other paths will close down on you. So if you find yourself struggling to clear an exam, you find yourself struggling to move forward because you've been attempting to do something, clearing to do something, and it still hasn't worked, please recognize that there are multiple different ways of getting to that same place that you wish to get to. And that place is very rarely that of a position or a company or a salary and so on. It's largely a place of feeling happy about where you are. And you'll be surprised at how so many different opportunities can get you to that point, not just one.
Very beautiful. I kind of really relate to that as well. About having a plan B, perhaps, not just putting all your eggs in one basket, which once again makes me shift levers. And I'm really curious about your opinions on a lot of interesting topic, which makes me talk about well-being. So, talking about hate speech, talking about easy, convenient hate speech, and I'll be very candid, Ankur, you are one of those few people, because I have actively followed your social media journey as a follower, and I've frankly learned a lot. You're one of those few people who have showed to his followers that, hey, this is what I get. And this doesn't disturb me, but I am actually empathetic towards the person who is giving me so much hate. So you are perhaps at a very beautiful junction. You're 40, fairly comfortable in the skin. You have seen life, you have a family. But I also wonder about those 20 years old who may not be operating at that much of a scale as you are, but perhaps are trying to have their opinions on, let's say, LinkedIn or let's say Instagram. And there is convenient hate speech coming their way from someone just sitting behind the camera and not even caring about someone's emotion. I think there is a level of anonymity also playing a role there. What is your opinion to a 20-year-old who's trying to make a career, who's trying to have his or her opinions, perhaps, and is struggling with the hate speech or this new phenomena where anybody from behind his or her camera can say anything today?
It's a real thing, Shasha, and I don't think anyone can deny it or anyone can run away from it. All that you can do is just build the strength to experience it and then decide how you want to react to it. There are a few things that I certainly would advise people in their 20s to just remember almost always, if not every single time. Number one, I always remind myself, I am not going to take anybody's word seriously if I would not to ask that person for life advice. So if I don't ask that person for life advice, then anything else that they say is not to be taken seriously. That automatically eliminates a lot of people. But it's easier said than done because you're like, yeah, that sounds very nice, but how do you actually not get affected? The other thing that I would then do is to constantly and very proactively keep maintaining your own sanctity and your own mental stability. Please block people. Please mute people. Please block keywords. Please mute keywords. Do everything that you can to be not affected. And that is not you running away from, frankly, the truth, because none of this is going to help you become a better person. None of the hate is going to make you stronger. It is only going to make you feel like you're not doing something that you ought to do. And frankly, that's not where it will, because genuine, I wouldn't even call it hate, but genuine feedback that truly cares about you getting better will never seem to come from a point of hate. It will always seem to come from a point of genuine empathy and wanting to make things better for you. So that's the second one. Please use all these tools that are freely available for you to be seen in your mind. And then number three, despite all of this, if somebody does reach out, somebody does do something which affects you, then at least I have personally felt that the best way to disarm them is to just be respectful. Because it takes a lot for somebody's life to be super shitty for them to shit on others. Nobody who's in a good space will ever want to shit on others. Nobody. So if they are shitting on others, they're actually in a bad space in life. And if you're respectful towards them, not in a manner of being submissive, not in a manner of being subservient, not in a manner of saying that you're lesser than them, but saying, thank you for sharing a point of view. I appreciate it. It will just disarm them, because nobody does that to them anymore. They are in a dark place. They are in a shitty, bad phase, and that gets them to react the way that they do. I have never had any instance that I can remember, all through Groupon nearby, even today, where somebody would be angry, be livid, reach out, say whatever they want to say, and you are just thanking them, and they would still continue hating you. They just drop it because they're like, yahan to kuch hone hi nahi wala. Nothing's going to happen here. It's like either they recognize or they just move on to somebody else who's reacting because that's what they want.
Wow, that is very hard thing to do. Now that I am becoming, I am an entrepreneur, and I would say I have a small YouTube channel. I just still absorb that piece of advice and think if I would be ever able to do it. So hands off to you, Ankur. I really mean it when I say this. The kind of empathy that you have for someone who is sending hate your way. Once again, switching levers and talking about lifestyle. So there are two school of thoughts. There is one school of thought that is emerging by the leading entrepreneurs in this country that, hey, there is no merit of living in metropoles of the country. You rather move to tier 2 cities. It will lead to a lower cost of living. And you could perhaps have no pollution also. So we all know about the condition about Delhi, the heat wave, and other things. On the other hand, I think I'm also realizing other opinions. So, for example, this is my opinion. I am right now living a life outside of India. There is different level of quality of living here in Boston, different air, different weather, the quality of people, etc. And of course, you have also lived a part of your life here in US as well. I think it was in Michigan.
Yeah.
Two drastic opinions: tier 2 versus outside India, which is like working abroad versus working in tier 2 city. Which one would be your preference, once again, to the millennials or to a 20-year-old?
I think these are two very different choices, Sasha, and both of them are quite active choices one can make. Living outside of the country is, in my opinion, a very big decision, because while it gives you quite often financial freedom, independence, gives you a great standard of living, gives you an exposure that you perhaps wouldn't get in your country, it still means that you're far away from your motherland, if that is something you care about. You're far away from family, if that's something you care about. You're far away from perhaps even familiarity, which is something you might care about. And it takes a long time, perhaps a lifetime, for you to then absorb yourself into a completely different culture or a completely different environment. But if that works for you, I would highly recommend that. I've often said, if I could, though I don't think I will ever be able to, but if I could, I would love to send every Indian outside of India for at least 2 years and get them to experience that, particularly as a student, not necessarily as a working professional, but particularly as a student. Because when you're a student outside of India, you are witnessing so much and experiencing so much that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And that's not to say that the Indian system doesn't work, but this is just a whole new experience that we're not used to. Moving to a tier 2 city and becoming a remote worker is a fascinating option now, which I believe is a lot more available to almost every Indian as against going abroad, because it's at your free will, and all that it needs is a laptop or a mobile phone and an internet connection. And the world is your playground. You could be sitting wherever you want to and yet be working with the top companies across the world as a freelancer. You could be also working with a top company as a remote worker, as a salaried employee. You could be working from home with a company which is in a big city, perhaps traveling to that city once every 2 weeks, perhaps every month, and just spending time with your team and then coming back. your expenses are much lower, you're with family, you're in an environment that's not rushed, you earn a lot of money for the kind of spending that you have to do. Thus, you tend to save a lot, hopefully invest that money. And then life doesn't have to be working for 30, 40 years. It could very well be 10 to 15 years, and you could have enough saved and invested that you don't have to work anymore. So both of them are brilliant. If you were to ask me, I think the second one, as I said, is a far more likely option for most Indians, and something that I do believe is going to become a reality in the next 10 to 20 years, where a lot of young people will be taking options that allow them to work from anywhere, experience the city life when they want to, but then come back to a life where their expenses are low, their income is still just high, and they get to witness the best of both worlds.
So, all right, that's my time with Ankur Warikoo. I hope you like what he had to discuss. Ankur was kind enough to take questions across lifestyle, across personal finance, and across career. And as I've always maintained, if you need more help to get into management consulting, product management, or even public policy, feel free to check out my education venture, globalgovernance-initiative.org. With that, if you like this video, feel free to hit on the like button, and of course, share it with your friends so that they get to know about all the cool things that we are discussing when we are doing Cheers with you on Chai. And stay happy, stay healthy, and be kind to each other. I'll see you very much soon. Bye-bye.